Do you want more good recruiting news for the Ducks? You might be getting it soon.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time. Once again for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Could a quarterback transfer out? What's the draw for Oregon men's basketball? That's all coming up on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan with the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. So, recruiting buzz is plentiful for Oregon at the moment, and there's this interesting contrast for one player in particular that you should all have your eye on if you don't already. Jalen Lott is a four-star athlete, wide receiver, probably a wide receiver, but listed as an athlete on 24/7 Sports. 6 foot, 170 pounds, number 4 athlete in the class of 2026. He has visits lined up to USC, Texas, and Oregon in that order in the month of June. And he has a crystal ball from one recruiting source to Oregon. Hey, thumbs up. He's got a crystal ball over at 24/7 for Texas. And that's noteworthy, not just because there are competing crystal balls here, but both of his parents were athletes at Texas. So the good news could be coming Oregon's way. Time will tell. We'll see where Jalen Lott ends up committing and if he ends up committing before he takes the visits this summer. But that's not the only piece of recruiting news that you should have on the tip of your tongue, front of your mind, wherever you tend to put it. Kerry Adams, that's a 4-star corner, number 30 overall player in the class of 2026. He is visiting the Ducks on April 11th before the spring game. Keep an eye on that one, high-end DB recruit. Jared Curtis went on his visit to Georgia. Oregon is still in the top 3 for Rider Lions, which is getting very interesting. And Kendre Harrison is pretty ridiculous. So let's go through those one at a time. Oregon just pulled in the best defensive back recruiting haul in the history of Oregon football. In 2025, there has not been a better one. Chris Hampton was the 24/7 Sports Recruiter of the Year for his time, and he was deservedly so given that particular award. Anytime a DB pops up on Oregon's radar, I'm interested to see what that means for how that position group pans out from a recruiting standpoint for 2026. Because when you set the bar higher than anyone set it before, what do you do the next cycle? Are you able to up the ante? Is it going to drop down a lot? Is it going to drop down a little? I don't know. But keep an eye on Adams. Then Jared Curtis continues to be a 2-horse race. Oregon and Georgia. Oregon and Georgia. He just took visits to both. Of course, he was at the Oregon coast recently. He was at Georgia not long ago. The reporting is that it went well. I haven't really heard of many visits that don't go well, frankly. Schools have gotten into a nice rhythm at this point as to how they give a kid a really good experience, make him feel welcome and at home, but Curtis continues to be Oregon or Georgia 50-50. Seems like a real 50-50 sort of battle. And remember, Oregon used to have Jonas Williams committed. He flipped to USC. Now, it's interesting that he flipped to the Trojans in 2026 because Rider Lions is the other wild card in this whole quarterback recruiting situation for the Ducks in this next cycle. And Oregon is kind of the wild card with regards to Rider Lions. So I get the sense, and I hope that Oregon is prioritizing Jared Curtis over Rider Lions. There's no bad option here. Want to make that very clear. These guys are both 2 of the best quarterbacks in the cycle. I'm just a little bit more bullish on Curtis, but Lions is still very much in the fold. Now, Lions is also looking at up to 5 other schools. It was kind of a 3-horse race, or at least that's how it looked. Oregon, USC, BYU. He's a California kid. He's of the LDS faith. And so BYU is kind of the outlier in this group because the other schools that are reportedly still having a shot at going out and getting him, Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, Michigan. That one's interesting. I'll touch on Michigan in a moment. And Ohio State, which has a pretty good track record with quarterbacks as long as Ryan Day has been there. So Michigan's the interesting one. They just pulled the number one quarterback in the class of 2025, Bryce Underwood. I don't know if he starts this year for the Wolverines, but we also have to remember with Ryder Lyons is he's a 2026 recruit, but he's really a 2027 recruit because he's planning to take a one-year mission after high school. So that kind of changes the calculus for a couple of these schools a bit, and I think is why USC could go after him and still have Jonas Williams committed, and they brought in a quarterback in 2025, and Oregon brought in a 2025 quarterback, and if they get Curtis, sure, technically they could go get Ryder Lyons. That seems unlikely. I think I've suggested that before. Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting guy, has let's just say not been wild about the over on. We were recording a segment of Locked On College Football, and he said, someone suggested, maybe Oregon could get both. That's not going to happen. In my head, I thought, I'm pretty sure that was me. I don't know whose content he came across, but it might have been me. I'm just saying timeline-wise, it could work out. But realistically, the recruiting pressure that is on both of these guys from so many high-profile schools makes it pretty unlikely. So it's probably going to be one or the other. I hope it's Curtis. You'd have to say Oregon's in a better position there than with Ryder Lyons just because there are fewer schools that are decidedly in the recruitment. But you never know how these things are going to play out. And if Oregon, has Curtis go to Georgia and they get Ryder Lyons and then they don't have, a true freshman on the roster in 2026, they're totally fine. They'd be totally fine. Obviously, I'd rather have them. Not trying to say, well, no, Oregon doesn't need any of these guys. No, you want to get them to be sure. But Oregon's long-term quarterback plan looks pretty darn good right now. Dante Moore again. Maybe Kelly Smith Jr. by 2027. Maybe Ryder Lyons is in the fold. I don't know. But they got plenty of options. Luke Moga's in there. I'll be talking about him in the next segment on today's show. So that's the bulk of the recruiting buzz here on this wonderful Tuesday. Hope you're all having a great day whenever you're listening to or watching the show, frankly. And I want to talk about Kendra Harrison for a moment. I'll circle back to hoops talk to wrap up today's show. But in the NCHSAA, that's North Carolina High School Athletics Association, Final Four and 2A state championship game, Kendra Harrison led his team to, I think, their 61st straight win. He's pretty good. So Harrison is 6'6", 6'7", in the 250 or so range. Really good athlete. Really good athlete. In the Final Four of the high school playoffs, he had 26 points and 19 rebounds. Just in case you forgot that he's also a top 100 basketball prospect, he has over 1,000 points and rebounds in his career. He's a junior at the moment. I can hear that chant from already from a hypothetical student section. He's a junior. Yeah, so he's been incredibly productive, and they've won a lot of basketball games. They have a couple of really good players on the team. But it's been kind of hard to track down some hoops highlights, but because he played in these games, I was able to see a little bit more of him. And I wasn't watching the game live, just seeing the highlights. But, hey, that's the good stuff. I think he is Elgin Cook. I think that is his ceiling. Kind of an undersized, athletic big. Don't know that he's a big shooter. He's capable of shooting. Don't think that's a primary part of his game. Most of his highlights are dunks. And certainly there will be a jump up in competition when he won't be bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody else. But I tell you what, that kid plays with a mean streak. You talk about being a tone-setting attitude guy. He gives me Elgin Cook vibes or smaller and Folly Dante vibes. Just absolute energy everywhere you look. So it's pretty awesome that he has shut down his recruitment, if you missed Friday's episode, and he is staying committed to the Ducks across the board. I would love to see him play both sports just because it would be fun. It'd be a challenging crossover, but I mean, if he were to become a bench piece for Dana Altman's team starting next year that worked his way into the rotation by February, March, when Dana's teams usually start playing good basketball, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. But that guy is a heck of an athlete. He dunks with ease. He blocks a lot of shots, plays above the rim, jumps off 2 feet really well. Like, he's a 5-star athlete for a reason. So that's the recruiting buzz. Let me know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All that good stuff. Oregon's got 5 quarterbacks right now. 5 quarterbacks, technically, all going for the starting job this year. By the end of spring ball, could it be 4? First, this episode brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. And you know what? The Locked On Team of the Week's Florida Gators. I'm going to Oregon women's basketball. You know why? Because last year, it was maybe the worst season in Kelly Graves' history as Oregon's head coach. They lost 14 straight games. Most of them weren't close to end the year. And here they are as a 10 seed taking on Vanderbilt in the NCAA tournament this weekend. That is what I'm talking about for a team in the week. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what Kelly Graves' squad have done here. It's clear that our team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder. Go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day, you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get them term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You want peace of mind as a parent, right? Of course you do. You want to make sure your family's financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives you that peace of mind. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. You ever do real cardio exercise for the first time in months? Yeah, I did. And that made today's second segment sip really, really important. So mailbag questions are important too, and I value them. Let me know what they are in the YouTube comments, Twitter. If you want priority access and a bunch of other perks as well, you can become a Locked On Ducks insider. Link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. So got a bunch of questions that I'm still rolling through from my Locked On Ducks insider crowd. Could Luke Moga transfer? Well, that's an interesting question because Moga going into this year is at best the third quarterback on Oregon's roster. And last year he was probably the fourth quarterback on Oregon's roster. He could see that as, hey, taking a step forward there. But that would come down to a couple of things. Number one, what are his expectations for having a chance to compete for Oregon's starting quarterback job? And by the way, if Dan Lanning is serious about having an open quarterback competition, which is not something the Ducks have had in quite some time, then theoretically Moga could get himself into the fold. He has something nobody else in that room has. He is an incredible athlete. I mean, it's not close. There is not another quarterback in that room who could separate himself with one particular trait the way that Luke Moga can. If you lined up all 5 Oregon quarterbacks, 4 scholarship, 1 walk-on, and you had him do a 40-yard dash, Moga's smoking him. It's not close. Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, frankly, are probably the least mobile quarterbacks Oregon's had since... and they're not immobile, by the way. They're not statues. Dante moves pretty well and can throw on the run, can, scramble a little bit when he needs to, but definitely wouldn't describe him as a runner. I'd say maybe Vernon Adams, and, VA was a scrambler, but VA wasn't that much of a runner. I'm not gonna bring it up. My mind just went right back to an unfortunate play. Okay. We're not gonna bring that up. We're not going down that rabbit hole here. So the interesting thing about Oregon and the spring transfer portal window, which opens on April 15th, so less than a month away, and it'll be open for 10 days. Oregon's spring game's actually after that. The day it closes is April 25th. Oregon's spring game is on the 26th. So if you're someone that is looking to transfer out of Oregon's program, the spring game, as Matt Rule over at Nebraska has pointed out, provides a bit of an opportunity to at least put something on film to show other teams. But if Luke Moga sees himself as not finding, the sort of traction towards playing time that he was hoping for when he first committed out of high school, and he was never supposed to be an immediate starter. The 2 years that he is spent with Oregon, like I never thought that he would be seriously in the or one year, I should say, that this will be his second year. I didn't expect it last year. Don't expect it this year. Maybe in 2026 there'd be more of a shot, but if Dante Moore comes back, I think that's probably what he's waiting to see. Because between Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, we know Dante Moore has a higher ceiling. Well, if Dante Moore just comes out of the gates and has a Marcus Mariota 2012 level season, obviously he's not the runner Marcus was, but if he's that good of a passer right away, he could be one and done to the NFL. I remember talking to him, Dante Moore, that is, when he was still in high school, figuring out where he wanted to go. And, I asked him about his future plans, and he was not shy about saying, yeah, I want to get to the NFL. Well, I mean, if he leads Oregon to an 11-1 season, maybe they lose the Big Ten championship game, win a playoff game, and then lose a tight one to, I don't know, some really good team like Notre Dame or Texas or Penn State, Ohio State, whoever, like, that could be a position where he feels, yeah, I'm good. I feel like my draft stock's riding high. That's not what I anticipate taking place, but it could. So that would open the door a little bit more. But he was always going to need more time as a passer. He was incredibly raw in that regard. I think his ceiling as a quarterback is Avery Johnson over at Kansas State, who's going into his second full year starting this year and was a part-time starter in 2023, full-time this past season. Kansas State went, I think, 8-4. I'm pretty sure they were 8-4, 9-3 in the regular season. They were a good team. I think that's what Luke Moga's ceiling is as a quarterback. So that would certainly be a different style of quarterback than what Oregon has had so far since Dan Lanning arrived. Like Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix are both mobile, but they did a lot of work slicing and dicing from the pocket because they were experienced veteran guys. So if Moga thought he'd be further up the depth chart going into his second season, maybe. I'd be mildly surprised if he transferred out this year. I'd be completely unsurprised if Dante Moore comes back and he looks at the quarterbacks ahead of him next year and says, yeah, I don't know. But that also depends on what Austin Novosad does. Because if Novosad is going to transfer out next year because, he's behind, let's say he loses the quarterback battle to Dante Moore this year, and then next year Dante Moore decides to come back, well, Dante will still be the starter. Then maybe Austin transfers out, and then Luke is higher up that depth chart. And suddenly he's the backup. Maybe. So, no, to answer your question, I don't expect Luke Moga to transfer out because I don't think that, that's the first part of it. But then the second part of it, what are his expectations? Did he expect to be starting by his second year, third year, fourth year? I don't know. Those conversations are between him and the staff. But I haven't heard any rumblings about that. I don't expect that will be something I will discuss here on the pod in the coming weeks. But crazier things have happened. Keith Brown once upon a time said, I'm here, not going anywhere. And then 2 days later, he's in the portal. So the portal will be wild. Very, very crazy. Another question that came in. Can the O-line gel and sync up prior to Montana State? This is a great question. A very, very good question. Because as we saw last year, when the O-line wasn't gelling early on, it was a train wreck. Almost lost to Idaho. Could have lost to Boise State. I know Boise's a good team, but at home, no, they shouldn't have had that. They shouldn't have had that good of an opportunity to win. So it was a mess. 7 sacks allowed in those 2 games, and then they figured it out. Remember that Oregon State game in the second half in particular? It was like a sigh of relief that ran through my entire body. Where I was just like, thank goodness. They're going to be fine. And alas, they were. They went 13-0, won the Big Ten. So they were indeed fine eventually. However, Oregon's O-line was struggling, and they won those games with a guy who is now the most experienced quarterback in the history of college football. Dante Moore, not Dylan Gabriel, does not have as many starts. If Dante Moore were in the Idaho and Boise State games last year, I think they beat Idaho. I don't know that they beat Boise. So I would like for the O-line to gel better than they did a season ago. I think the bar's set pretty low. Under 3 yards a carry against Idaho. Malik Terry wore that shirt, and then they ran it just okay against Boise State. Better, but still not great. But then by the end of the year, they were, of course, a really good unit. Now, will they be gelling as quickly early on? I think they have a chance to because of Poncho. He's going into his second year starting at center, and that's where the root of the problems were a year ago. I definitely expect there to be a progression along the offensive line. I don't think early on you're going to see a unit that plays as well as they will at the end of the season because there are 4 newcomers potentially in that. Actually, regardless of who wins out in who wins this position battle or that position battle, maybe Dave Ewley beats out Matthew Bedford or Janoris Wilson beats out Alex Harkey at tackle. Like, even if those things happen, you've got Poncho, you've got 4 starters. But they were going back and forth with the center position, which is where all your calls are coming from up front. That's probably your most important spot. Left tackle is right there at second. So those 2 positions, I expect to be really good. I don't think the O-line... Could the O-line be as good as last year? By the end of the season, maybe. But Josh Connerly was freakishly good. I mean, ridiculously good. And Isaiah World is a 5-star transfer, NFL potential, all the talent in the world, no pun intended. I love that addition. Absolutely. I don't know that I can say, he's just going to be as good as Josh Connerly was. Well, there were really only 1 to 2 left tackles in the entire country that were as good as Josh Connerly last year, particularly in pass protection. So that's setting a pretty high bar. But can they gel early on better than last year because they have Poncho there? I believe they can, but still, that's a unit that I think is better by week 10 than they are in week 2. Speaking of things that progress over the course of the year, Oregon basketball does those sorts of things. I love Oregon's draw. First, this episode brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Finding the right talent is important. And if you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. That's what they're all about, helping you take your business to the next level. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. I absolutely love the draw that Oregon basketball got going into this NCAA tournament, and that doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to make some surprise Final Four run or anything like that. I've got some numbers on that in a moment, but Oregon being in the East region, I think was the best outcome overall. The Midwest region wouldn't have been bad, but Houston's in there. I think Houston's really good. They're probably my national champion pick right now. On the women's side of things, I think the 1 seeds in the women's bracket are so absurdly good. I mean, absurdly good. I don't think anything matters. But I definitely have higher hopes for the men than the women, not just because they're a higher seed, but because I think they've showcased the ability to play at a higher level this year. And they're in a place program-wise that's different than where the women are at. I think Kelly Graves did a phenomenal job to pivot, turn over the roster a bunch, and get this team to the NCAA tournament. This has already been a successful season. I think for a lot of people, and I'm in this camp, for Oregon to be able to say, that was a successful season, you got to at least beat Liberty on Friday, and getting to the Sweet 16 would also be cool, obviously, but that's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. So different expectations there. Always the hope. I always have the hope. I say this with basketball, football, baseball, softball, whatever. I might not always have the expectation. Like football, I don't expect them to be as good as 2024. I still have the hope that they will be even better, always and forever. But for Dana Altman's squad, I think they get a pretty good draw here. So Liberty is the 12 seed that they are playing on Friday. And amongst the 12 seeds, Oregon's been projected as a 5 for a very long time. Amongst the 12 seeds, I think Oregon got the weakest one. Now, I can't say I've watched a ton of McNeese, but I know that their head coach, Will Wade, is really good. And UC San Diego is in the tournament for the first time, but they can shoot the daylights out of the three. And Oregon has had their moments where they struggle defending the arc this season. And then Colorado State just won the Mountain West tournament. They're one of the hottest teams in the country. I'm probably picking them to win in the first round. So if you lay out those 4-12 seeds, I think Oregon has the most favorable one. They're favored by 6.5 points. The Ducks are, which means absolutely nothing in the month of March. Most of these are coin flip games. But the region that Oregon's in, I think is the most favorable of the bunch. So if you were in the South, Michigan State is a 2 seed. Wouldn't want to try and go through them at any point in time. We've seen that story play out before. You go down to the Midwest and you've got Houston, who I think is really good. You go down to the West, I think that could be a more favorable region to be in compared to the East. Florida, though, is the number 1 seed, kind of the hottest team in college basketball right now. So Duke is the 1 seed in Oregon's region, and Duke is really good. They also played in the weakest conference of any of the 1 seeds. You have 2 SEC teams, Florida and Auburn, Houston in the Big 12, Duke in the ACC. Still, the Blue Devils have been great, but the other reason that it could potentially, maybe possibly work out, he's expected to come back at some point in the tournament. Cooper Flagg, the future number 1 overall pick, future Trailblazer, I'm speaking it into existence. Cooper Flagg injured his ankle in the ACC tournament. He's probably not going to play in the first round against American or Mount St. Mary's because it's a 1-16 game. Duke doesn't need that. But if he re-aggravates that injury, yeah, Duke is still good, but they're not as scary. They cannot be as scary. I know they played well in the tournament, but at some point, not having your best player who averages like 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists a game, that's got to come back to bite you. At some point, I don't know when, but at some point, I would rather play Duke without Cooper Flagg than any of the other 1 seeds in a potential Sweet 16 matchup. But I'm getting ahead of myself again because Oregon has to face Liberty on Friday in Seattle, get up to Seattle, make that a home game for the Ducks. Liberty has to go all the way across the country. If they win that game, they'll take on the winner of Arizona and Akron. Now, the interesting thing is that Arizona-Akron is a trendy upset pick. I am not there. They still have Caleb Love. I think Tommy Lloyd is a good coach. Just because they haven't made a run to the Final Four since Tommy Lloyd got there doesn't mean that they aren't still a really good team. Now, Wildcats are favored in that game by 13.5. Oregon's favored against Liberty by 6.5. So when I was talking about, I like to be a 4 seed compared to being a 5 seed, that's the difference you're talking about. Still, I feel good about Oregon's chances here because this is Oregon, that is the best team Liberty has played this year by far. They do not have a quad 1 game. Not a quad 1 win. They haven't played a quad 1 game this season. When you go to the preview, which is something I have been looking over for every team in this tournament for a while over the last couple of days. I haven't fully filled out my bracket yet. We are going to do a Locked On Ducks bracket pool. Winner gets a shout out here on the show. I don't know if there's anything else I could provide. If there is, I'll try to think of it. But if you want to join that pool, just hit me up on Twitter, or if you're an insider, shoot me a message or anything like that. So the best team probably that Liberty beat this year was Kansas State on the road. They did beat McNeese, who's a tournament team. They're a 12 seed down in the Midwest region, but Kansas State was not a good team, but they were in the Big 12, so that's not nothing because that's a really good conference. They also played FAU. That's not what they were when they went to the Final Four, but they lost that game all the way back in November. But then the other key wins are Conference USA matchups. Louisiana Tech, Middle Tennessee twice, Charleston, who's I don't think is Conference USA. I think they're, I want to say like Southern Patriot League maybe. Charleston might be in the Patriot League. Anyway, so Liberty, much like when they played Oregon football a couple of years ago, hasn't played a team like Oregon this year. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about where Oregon's at. And do I think Arizona is the most dangerous 4 seed that's out there? I don't. I think Texas A&M is a better team as a 4 seed. I think Maryland's a better team. Purdue's already beaten Oregon this year. on their home floor. So again, if you line up those 4 seeds and say, who would you most want to play? I'm picking Arizona, even though that's a team that could absolutely beat Oregon. We watched Caleb Love just torch Oregon a couple times last year in the Pac-12, RIP. But Oregon did beat him in the conference tournament, of course. So a couple of stats here on the 12-5 matchup. The 12 seed has won at least one game in the NCAA tournament since 2000, every tournament but 5. The most recent time they didn't was 2023. So there is a lot of history with 12s beating 5s. It's like the most generic bracket advice you give to someone doing it for the first time. Pick a 12 to beat a 5. 5 seeds have made the Final Four. 5 seeds have made the Final Four 9 times. They have made the national championship game 4 times. The only 5 seed to ever win it all, the 2008 Kansas Jayhawks, with Mario Chalmers hitting the shot against Memphis and then head coach John Calipari with this guy named Derrick Rose playing point guard. That's the only 5 seed to ever win it all. But 2 years ago, there were 2 5 seeds in the Final Four, San Diego State and Miami. The Aztecs, of course, went on to play in the national championship game where they lost to UConn, who was a 4 seed, and UConn was, just better that particular day. But I bring that up to say, March Madness is a crapshoot every year. Roll the dice, anything can happen. But this is the sort of position I expect Oregon to be in year out. And I'll continue talking about this throughout the week in the lead up to the game, but there is no reason why Oregon couldn't go on a heater and make a run, or at least get to the second weekend, which would be really exciting. That's kind of where I'd like them to get. And then I'd say, boy, that was a great season. Because then you built on what they did a season ago. You go into the offseason, figure out how you're going to reload, because there are going to be a lot of guys that won't be on the team next year. No TJ Bamba, no Brandon Angel. Bam Tracy's probably back. We haven't heard on Nate Biddle. I don't know what Jackson Shellstad's thinking with the NBA. I really hope he comes back, of course. So there could be some serious roster vacancies. There could also be a really good core going into next season. But I like the Liberty matchup. We'll dive more into them as the week goes on. But I think Oregon's in a good spot. Losing to a 2 seed in Michigan State in a de facto road game, second game of back-to-back. As I talked about yesterday, no shame in that whatsoever. I don't hold that against them or get worried about, oh man, are they trying to... No, this is still a team that has won 8 of their last 9 games, including a road victory against Wisconsin, who's a 3 seed in this East region. The 2 seed is Alabama, the 3 seed's Wisconsin, the 4 seed's Arizona, the 5 seed's Oregon, the 6 seed is BYU, the 7 seed is St. Mary's. They are not a threat in the tournament. The 8 seed's Mississippi State, 9 Baylor. I am doing this from memory. I've looked at the brackets so much at this point. I'm a sicko with this stuff, man, an absolute sicko. The 10 seed is Vanderbilt. The 11 seed is VCU. 12, obviously, Liberty. 13, Akron. 14 is Montana. 16 is the winner of Mount St. Mary's and American. 15, I will admit, I forgot who Alabama plays. Robert Morris. So, go Robert Morris, I guess. Pull an upset. But Oregon's just got to focus on win this game. I'm not going to say. I had a thought about a stat. I'm not going to say it. So we'll just end on all of that. Positivity. Overall, I feel good. Let me know your thoughts below. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.